Talkin Cougars is presented by Flat Stick Pub, local craft beer, old school fun, memorable moments. Man, our Cougs suffered their first loss of the season. This is unfamiliar territory, 25-17, down in California in Pasadena. Welcome to Talkin Cougars. I'm Michael Bumpus. Hey, B, it was a tough one, man.
Yeah, it was a tough one, Bump. It was not the Cougs' best effort so far this year. High hopes going down to the Rose Bowl, and really it was a little bit of a comedy of errors on both sides of the ball at times. The defense definitely played better, but with that hot weather, they got worn down, and offensively just couldn't get much going against a really good UCLA defense. It's time now for our opening drive, brought to you by Valley Buick GMC. See you in the Valley. Got to start with that UCLA defense, Bump. They were unbelievable all day. The front seven was throwing all sorts of looks at the Washington State offense, and the Washington State offensive line really had a hard time picking up those different pressures and those different studs. I mean, the man to talk about is Leatu Latu, number 15 for UCLA. He was all over Cam Ward all day. Gabriel Murphy was a part of it. Daniel Muasau was a part of it. 3 sacks on the day from that UCLA defense. But more importantly, it just felt like it was pressure all day. Cam Ward was just on his back foot. He was moving. He was throwing across his body. That led to interceptions. It just was a tough day all around for the Washington State offense.
Yeah, tough day, B. I was down there on the field. You were nice and comfy in some AC up in the press box, you know how you quarterbacks do. But I was down there before the game trying to get a feel for what this was going to be like. I was on the UCLA side. They seemed confident. On the Washington State side, they seemed confident. But I think from the very first series, UCLA made this a very physical game. We saw something from Cam Ward we haven't seen before. 2 interceptions, right? He didn't turn the ball over before this. 2 interceptions here. I spoke to one of the DBs, Alex Johnson, who did have an interception. He predicted what was going to happen. He heard the slot receiver say, look, I'm going to run a mesh. He was over number 2. He knew he can slide to number 1 and get deeper than he normally would to pick Cam Ward off. That just summarizes the day. And then you add in all the turnovers that the Cougs had, man. They coughed the ball up a couple of times. You had 4 turnovers, yet you were still in this game. So at the end of the game, you had a chance to win, but UCLA's defense set the tone. It was a loss, but I think that the Cougs can learn from this and build off of this, because you needed to have a game like this. You wanted to win it, but you needed a physical game in that heat against a well-rounded UCLA defense. We were wondering what they were going to look like. I think they're for real, B.
There's no doubt they're for real. We had said going into it, they hadn't really played an offense of Washington State's caliber, and the reality is it didn't matter because they matched up good against the Cougs as well. As good as the first 4 games they played, definitely one of the top defenses in the Pac-12. And to your point, I mean, Jake Dicker had said following the game that, Washington State got humbled a little bit, and that's okay, right? There's still a lot left in this season for Washington State, and they got to be able to refocus. And sometimes refocusing coming off a loss can be the most powerful thing for a team. The reality is, in the Pac-12, teams are going to beat up on each other. I think of all the leagues across the country, the most parity is in the Pac-12, and you see week in and week out, there's no easy outs. So, for Washington State, it's definitely one they got to learn from. And I think on both sides of the ball, I mean, defensively, I think there's some learning lessons too. You saw the team get worn down a little bit. The heat mattered, but also that running game of UCLA kind of saw some shades, some vintage Chip Kelly with those schemes in the run game.
Yeah, man, still had himself a day, carried the ball 30 times. That's the young man, the running back for UCLA. Also, the UCLA defense did a great job on third downs against the Cougs. The Cougs were leading the nation when it comes to third down conversions, around 60+%, 2 for 13 on the day. That's a clear indication that the offense wasn't able to go. And once UCLA got down into the red zone late in the game, they were able to stretch this defense east and west and then cut up the C and the B gap and have some big scores right there. So it was just missed opportunities. You turn the ball over. You're not good on third downs, which we're used to seeing. You only have about 200+ yards of offense. We're used to seeing over 400 yards. This was just a test. So sometimes it's good to be humbled. We never like it. We were 13th in the country, feeling really good about hopping into the top 10. If we were to win that game, you drop down to 19. Now it's just time to refocus. What can you learn from this? You watch the film, you be honest with yourself, and you come back ready to go.
Yeah, that's the reality of it. You got to be able to bounce back. You got to be able to find your footing, because the opposite of refocusing is going into a slide. And there's too many good teams on the schedule. You can't go into a slide. You got to get ready to bounce back next week.
All right, when we come back, we're going to take a closer look at the U of A, Arizona Wildcats. Man, they got a good ball club. Talkin Cougars is presented by Flat Stick Pub. Welcome back to Talkin Cougars. It's now time for Talkin Numbers presented by Cross Country Mortgage, making every mortgage feel like a win. Man, those Arizona Wildcats took the USC Trojans to 3 overtimes. B-man, tell me what you saw. That was a wild game.
It was a wild game. I saw an explosive offense for Arizona led by backup quarterback Noah Fafita, who stepped in admirably the last couple weeks for Jaden DeLora, who's been banged up. I mean, Fafita was lights out. Found Jacob Cowing, their star receiver, for multiple touchdowns in overtime. They were all in USC all game, and it felt like the Trojans, I mean, they just barely snuck by. And for a top 10 team, obviously that's a tough deal. But for Washington State, they're going to look at that film and see a really good Arizona Wildcats football team and a defense that I was surprised that really stepped up and got after USC and made life kind of tough on Caleb Williams, the star quarterback for USC.
Yeah, man, Caleb only threw for 219 yards and 1 touchdown. That is the lowest performance this year with USC. Man, they really depended on the run game to get going. 146 yards on the ground for USC. But, man, I got to look at Fafita. I was really pleasantly surprised by his performance. The week before against University of Washington, he played some good football. He comes back the second week against USC, and he backs it up with 5 touchdowns. This Arizona team looks like they're battle tested. They lost a couple of close games to probably 2 of the best teams, or the 2 best teams in the conference right now. So I know these guys are playing with a lot of confidence, and they ran the football well. We got our guy McMillan, as you mentioned, with 138, but run the ball. Jonah Coleman, he had 22 carries for 143 yards. They got the pass game going. They got the run game going. They did just enough on defense to corral Caleb Williams with only 1 touchdown and over 200 yards, but they did give up some yards on the ground. If there's anything that I'm still waiting for WSU to do, is to be able to run the football. Arizona looks like they might provide an opportunity there, but I got to look at this WSU defense and say, you better be on point too. Last week it was a run game that got you. It might be the pass game that you got to focus on this week.
Yeah, you wonder if it's a little bit better matchup for that Washington State defense to be going against a little bit more pass-heavy offense, because the Cougs feel like they're able to get pressure on the quarterback and play so well on the back end, whereas a team like UCLA that wants to ground and pound you, even Oregon State, right, they're going to get those yards on the ground. So, you mentioned the ability of Arizona to run the football, but I think they really want to be a pass-first team. Jed Fish, as the head coach for Arizona, but an offensive mind, right? In the NFL as an offensive coordinator for a long time. He's a really, really good offensive play caller, and he's going to put whoever the quarterback is, whether it's Noah Fafita or Jaden DeLora is back, he's going to put them in a good situation. You mentioned that the receiving core, Jacob Cowing, Tatero McMillan. I mean, those guys, Tanner McLaughlin, the tight end, those guys are really talented. And so if they can run the football, if they can establish the run and then play action pass, it's going to be a long day for Washington State. So that defense, as you mentioned, for the Cougs has really got to refocus after that game against UCLA and kind of get back to the ways that they have been playing. I thought against UCLA for the bulk of the game, they played really well, and it was that fourth quarter they got a little tired at the end. But I think they can cause problems for that Arizona offense. It'll be really interesting to see. And in particular, you talk about if DeLora goes, right, the transfer from Washington State, right, he's got 5 interceptions on the year. He threw 4 picks last year when the Cougs played down at Arizona. If he is the one to go, he's prone to turn the football over. That's a chance maybe for Washington State to make some big plays.
Yeah, if DeLora plays, you got to provide some pressure. If Fafita plays, you got to provide some pressure there. And just play some clean football. Take care of the football like I mentioned before. Washington State, they weren't able to do that. Here's another thing too, man. You got University of Arizona playing some good offense and playing just enough defense to keep USC corralled, man. They had 12 penalties. 12 penalties, talking about the Wildcats, for 99 yards. The Cougs last week only had 4 penalties. So those are like the hidden yardages right there. You don't really talk about the penalties until that number reaches double digits. I look at Arizona and I say, all right, there's another advantage that the Cougs have. It's just be a disciplined football team. We know how Dicker gets down. We know how Arbuckle gets down. These guys want to stay focused. So be within yourself, be disciplined, play fast, and be ready for a shootout. the Wildcats had SC down for the first time this year. 7-0, 10-0, I believe it was 17, and then SC kind of brought it closer together in the end of the second going into the third quarter. So play discipline, okay, and be ready. Arizona might go up a score or two because they have that offense. They've shown that they are capable, but keep your composure, and I think it should be a good game.
I think it really helps for Washington State to get home, have a little home cooking back in Pullman at Giesa Field too, right? Anytime you go on the road, if you got to turn around and go back to back on the road, it can be really difficult, especially after a loss. So coming home, I think, really helps for Washington State. When we come back, we got to take a look at Cam Ward, see if he can bounce back from a tough outing against the UCLA Bruins. Talkin Cougars is presented by Flat Stick Pub. Welcome back to Talkin Cougars. This week's Cougs Spotlight is presented by Cougs First. Think Cougs First for products, services, and hiring. We got to take a look on the Spotlight bump at Cam Ward, looking to bounce back after the worst outing he's had in this 2023 season. Brought back some shades of 2022, some tough decisions, throwing the ball late over the middle. I think for me, a lot of it had to do with the pressure he was feeling from UCLA, because he started out the game really good, and then it started to kind of unwind a little bit as it got a little tighter, a little more pressure coming from that front seven from UCLA. So, I think for Cam, I know he took ownership after the game as good quarterbacks do and good leaders do. I think this is a really good opportunity for him to show what he's made of coming back against the Arizona Wildcats.
Yeah, I agree, man. It wasn't great. 19 of 39, 197 yards, and he threw 2 interceptions. For the first time this year, we saw Cam look a little confused with what he was seeing. And we were talking during the break, B, and it's like, look, they were getting home UCLA defense with 3 and dropping everybody else, getting all that pre-snap movement, trying to confuse the young quarterback. This is only his second year playing big-time football, and I think UCLA knew that. And they said, look, we're going to make him have to diagnose the play, gets a pre-snap read, and then make sure he knows what he's looking at. So you tip your cap off to the DC over there for UCLA, but you also realize that, Cam, there's another opportunity for him to learn how defenses are going to attack him. Because I can almost guarantee it that University of Arizona saw what UCLA did to Cam Ward. They say, you know what? We want to do some of that too. And what do you do as a young quarterback when you're not having success, when the guys aren't open the way they used to? You start to press a little bit. And I think both of his interceptions, one was a late throw trying to get to the sidelines. We had that flat defender drop into actually dropped into like the hook to curl. And then his second interception was him throwing across the body, across the middle, just trying to make a play because he felt all the pressure that was going on around him. So yeah, I think Cam's going to learn a lot, and I think he'll be okay this week.
Yeah, the thing with playing Arizona is that they bring a little bit of a similar structure to UCLA, which is that odd 3 down lineman front, that 3-3-5. So they have a lot of guys at or around the line of scrimmage, and they've had some success rushing the passer this year. Taylor Upshaw's got 4.5 sacks on the year. Jacob Manu, the weak side linebacker, he's second in the league in tackles with 50, but he's also got 3.5 sacks, which means as a linebacker, he's coming off the edge, and he's going to try and make some plays. So I would bet Arizona looks at that UCLA film, tries to tailor some of the things to what they do defensively. The difference is they don't have UCLA's pass rushers. I mean those Bruin defensive linemen and linebackers were really, really talented. So I do think for Cam, he's going to find a way to get kind of back into the groove that he had. And a little bit of it, you saw he took some sacks, but he also didn't get the rush yards that he had in the previous 4 games. I think a little bit of that is making sure he steps up in the pocket, and when he steps up, just go. If it's not there, just go and pick up positive yardage. Don't try and do too much, because he's got all the talent in the world. I think he gets in trouble when he's trying to maybe make too big of a play. Take the little plays, take the easy ones, and the chunk plays will come.
Yeah, I love that, B. Make the game simple, right? People can complicate this game of football. I understand why you hear the checks, the reads, the coverages, and all that. And it sounds like a complicated game. But I think if he gets back down to the basics, right? You go through your reads, high to low, low to high, 1, 2, 3 to 4 to check down. And if nothing's there, you use your athletic ability. He's one of the more athletic quarterbacks in the league. Doesn't run as much as some of these other guys, but he's definitely capable of doing it. I love a challenge, and I think Cam Ward loves a challenge as well. I think Jake Dickert and the rest of the guys love a challenge. So it's all about getting back to the fundamentals and reminding yourselves who you are during this week. You are a good football team who can move the football down the field. You are a football team that can protecting a lot better than they did last year. Cam was the second most sacked quarterback in the country last year. You are a football team with good receivers as well. So sometimes, bumps in the road, they happen out there. And like I mentioned, it was hot. I was down there. Cam Ward felt it. UCLA was bringing the heat, confusing the young quarterback, but now he sees it. It's on film. I bet you he's at home right now looking at his iPad or his iPhone, whatever he uses, and he's looking at these coverages and these pressures, and he's going to make it right.
Yeah, I think Cam Ward and Ben Arbuckle, the offensive coordinator for Washington State, are both going to be pretty motivated after they watch that UCLA film as they prepare for Arizona. There's no doubt about it. When we come back, let's take a look at some impact players for Washington State against the Arizona Wildcats.
Big time pop in the flat. So the Bruins need 6. Oh, and more broken. Well, back to back for Michigan. Look at this. What a play. This is Michigan. The best Cougar on the field in the first half with a stunner.
Talkin Cougars is presented by Flatstick Pub. Coug fans, Bump and I are coming to the Seattle area to do a live shoot of Talkin Cougars at the Flatstick Pub in Redmond next Tuesday, the 17th at 7 p.m. Come out and support, man. Bring those school colors. Show your love. Get on TV. Bump, it's going to be fun, man. I can't wait to see the Coug faithful out for Talkin Cougars.
Hey, it's going to be awesome. The Cougs are going to show up, man. And make sure you show up because before we actually do the live show, we're going to have a Q and an A. We can talk about the good old days back when we played. We can talk about the Leach era or this team too, man. It's going to be great, man. Come ready, wear your colors, and get your questions ready to go. Man, it's time for Best Bet now, brought to you by Northern Quest Resort and Casino, largest casino in the Northwest. All right, man, we got to talk about some breakout players, B. And I like the guy that you picked. I think we haven't seen enough of this young man. I think he can change the game. Who am I talking about?
And you're talking about Nikhil Watson. We've talked a lot about this running game for Washington State, or lack thereof, throughout this year. And, I think it really showed up against UCLA. We're not having a running game versus a good pass rush hurt this offense. So I would expect a commitment to the run game from Ben Arbuckle. I would expect Clay McGuire, the offensive line coach, to get these offensive linemen ready to go. You know how offensive linemen are, Bump? They don't like it when they don't play well, and they come back and they play nasty after that, right? I would expect that Washington State offensive line to come back and play mean and nasty and have their best game, which would lead to Nikhil Watson's best game. Only 150 yards so far this year, averaging less than 3 yards per carry. This is a guy who last year averaged almost 800 or had almost 800 yards rushing, over 5 yards per carry. It seems like he's a different back, and I don't think it's necessarily on him. He shares part of it, but obviously the offensive line, I think those two together are going to create a really, really dynamic game coming up against Arizona. I think it's a defense for the Wildcats that is ripe to get run on. I think Nikhil Watson is the guy that can do it.
Yeah, I like that pick. He did score a touchdown last game, but I was on a pass, right? He's a big boy for a reason. He wants to run the rock. And I think that we learned to win in this conference, you have to be able to play a physical type of game. And I think that's what Nikhil Watson brings to the table. 12 yards of rushing against UCLA. That is unacceptable. And I know that Arbuckle and everybody else is saying, look, let's get our big boys downhill. Let's run our zone, get our guards on that second level, and establish that run. Because that opens everything else up. If you want to help your quarterback bounce back like we spoke about earlier, you get that run game going, and that opens things up for him. I'm looking at this, the defensive line. RJ Stone, man. Didn't have a sack last game, and I think he's more than capable. We know what Arizona likes to do. They want to throw the football. They got Calvin over there, 8 total touchdowns for the year, 4 last week against USC. I mean, you got to get pressure on this quarterback. You got a young quarterback in Fafita. He has a great connection with McMillan. They both went to Servite High School. You see the connection over there, but you got to make life difficult for him. And I think going into the season, we kind of highlighted this defense anyway. We went to the season thinking, okay, the defense is going to hold it down. You got Brennan Jackson, RJ Stone, and the rest of the game that's going to help this offense out. It's kind of been the other way around so far. The defense has had their moments, but this defensive line should lead the charge. I'm looking at RJ and I'm saying, go get it. I'm looking at Brendan, I'm saying, go get it. And I think they can, and I think they will early, and I'm excited to see how they get after this young quarterback in Fafita.
Yeah, a good friend of ours, Bump, Mr. M. Christo Bruce, likes to talk about the game within the game.
Right.
He was a great defensive lineman for Washington State at the defensive end position. He'll talk about Brennan Jackson, R.J. Stone, and say, even if they're not getting sacks, are they impacting the game, right? The game within the game. Are they getting pressures? Are they getting hits on the quarterback? And the thing that I see against Arizona is both Fafita and Delora are smaller quarterbacks, particularly Fafita. He's a smaller quarterback. Delora's a little bit bigger, but he's shiftier and he'll get out of the pocket. So if you can make either of those guys uncomfortable, whoever it is, it's going to make it a long day for them. And that's where I think you're right. R.J. Stone, Brennan Jackson, the whole crew on the defensive line, if they can get that pressure, it's going to make it easier on the back end. I do think the defense played really well early against UCLA. They made a ton of plays, right? Multiple interceptions, the touchdown by Kapena Gushikin. They did everything they could when the offense couldn't pick up the slack. But I think this has to be a holistic effort against the Wildcats where the defense is able to force some turnovers and then the offense can capitalize. And I think those turnovers typically start with a defensive line getting pressure on the quarterback. And so, for Washington State, I think you're dead right. If the defense can lead the charge, this is a better matchup for the Cougs offensively, so they should be able to score points. And if the defense can do their thing, I think it could be a good day.
B, that's a great point. The defense kept these guys in the game last week. You got the pick six to the house. You got a couple fumbles by the Wazoo offense, and the defense holds UCLA to a field goal. Then they miss a field goal. With all that was going on, all the chaos that was happening, the defense made just enough plays to keep these guys in the game. So I think they're going to have to do the same this week. And again, I'm excited. I'm all about the bounce back, man. I'm excited to see what they do, and I think they will be fine. All right, that's going to do it for us, man. I'm Michael Bumpus. If you want some more of what I do, hit me up on Twitter, Michael Bumpus5. Also, Seattle Sports Station, 710 from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. every single day. On Saturdays, I'm on the Pac-12 Network. On Sundays, I'm doing my Seahawk thing. Man, come holla at me.
I'm Alex Birnk. You can catch me on the broadcast with Matt Chasnow, Jessamine McIntyre. We'll be calling the game from Pullman on the radio. Check us out. And don't forget, next week, Flat Stick Pub in Redmond. Bump and I will be shooting the show live on Tuesday, the 17th. Come check it out, Cougs fans. We can't wait to see you. That's a wrap. Talkin Cougars.